And I don't know that this is like a healthy thing, but I just remember growing up and I never wanted to be one of those people that's like, woe is me, or like whiny or like attention seeking. So I tried to go the opposite of that. And I think in some ways, maybe that wasn't the best for me because like I wouldn't ask for help necessarily. Mm-hmm. Or I was just like trying to be a bad bitch. I was like 9.
Hello, my LGBTQs, and welcome back to another episode of A Jaded Gay. I'm Rob Lovelace, and today I am a non-jaded gay because I am about to have a wine night tonight after this episode. So very excited about that. Don't worry, I won't be drinking alone. I actually have a friend here today, a special guest on our show, which we'll be getting to in a bit. So to kind of line it up, let's talk about confidence. So I feel like a lot of gay men put a great deal of effort into being quote unquote attractive. You know, we might work out obsessively or buy the fanciest looking clothes, try to have the best haircut, or have a routine skincare regime to have flawless skin. I'm talking about me. But a lot of people claim that confidence is actually the most attractive quality in a person. And having confidence in ourselves can be difficult. You know, we've talked about it throughout this podcast. Growing up feeling different or being rejected can cause us to doubt ourselves in many ways. And as a result, we may have developed a false sense of confidence, meaning we have to create an illusion of a life, one that seems exciting and luxurious. We've talked about this in topics on perfectionism, self-deprecating humor, body obsession, internalized homophobia. The list goes on and on. But if we want to live more fulfilling lives, then we need to develop a genuine sense of self-confidence. So with that being said, I'm excited to have my friend Tillie Lee join us today. She's actually the one who took the photo used in the cover art for the show, fun fact. But she is seriously unbothered and one of the most confident people I know. She's confident in herself, confident in her decisions, and confident in the universe that things are happening as they're supposed to. Basically, she's the complete opposite of me. So I want to talk with her about how she developed a sense of confidence, how she connects mindfulness and empowerment, and how we can all live more confident lives. But first, you know the drill, let's pull our tarot. So the card for this episode is the 8 of Pentacles in reversed. Now, as you remember, Pentacles is tied to the minor arcana, so it's things that we should be adjusting in our day-to-day lives. Pentacles is also tied to the element of earth. It's feminine energy, so it's asking us to be more meditative and reflective. And really, this card's tied a lot to, you know, putting in the hard work and reaping the fruits and rewards of our labor. And in numerology, 8 is tied to movement and transition, and also infinity, like infinite power, because if you think of the 8, it's connected as a constant loop. There's no break in it. So we're really getting ready to kind of channel our power. But when we draw this card in reversed, it's indicating that we might be feeling burnt out, that we're overworked, or that we're being undervalued. And with overworking and feeling burnt out, that might be an indication that we're focused on trying to create perfection, but it's actually our downfall, because when we try too hard, we're just chipping away at ourselves. And we start losing sight of the bigger picture and what we're working on in the first place. And typically when we're trying to be perfect, that means we're trying to control every situation we're in. And by trying to control those situations, it might be getting in the way for bigger and better things to happen and unfold naturally because we're trying to manipulate the circumstance. So this card's asking us to reflect on ways that we can maybe take some of that load off, or you take time to relax and kind of rejuvenate, re-energize, and find ways to let ourselves kind of just exist and go with emotions of it. You know, trust the timing, trust the universe, instead of trying to control every situation. So from tarot to Tillie, our next guest is a photographer, yoga instructor, and businesswoman. She's all about the zen and indifferent to mediocre men. Please welcome Tillie Lee.
Thank you. Lovely to be here.
So to kick off, you know, can you just tell us a little bit about you, what you do, what you identify as, all that fun stuff?
Of course. Yeah, I think you covered it. But so I'm a wedding and portrait photographer. I'm also a yoga teacher. I live in Pittsburgh, and I'm excited to come on here and hang out with my friend Rob in his closet and talk about things.
The best place to be.
Best place to be.
And also, I like to ask all my guests, are you today an honorary jaded or non-jaded gay?
I'm feeling pretty non-jaded.
Good. Why's that?
Just happy to come hang out with my friend. I was heard there'd be wine after.
Oh, there it is. Always goes back to the wine. Well, we'll go through this podcast really quick so we can get to the good stuff. But let's kick it off. You know, I love starting off episodes with vocabulary lessons. So according to Oxford Languages, self-confidence is a feeling of trust in one's abilities, qualities, and judgment. But what does that mean to you personally?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an ever-evolving thing, right? Like, it'll change as we get older, I think, and as we go through different experiences. But I would agree that it's having trust in yourself and your decisions and, you know, whatever feels true to you and kind of going with that. Because I just feel like if you can't trust your own choices and your own intuition, then like, what are you doing? You know? And I know that takes practice, and I've practiced it a lot, but that's kind of my definition. It's just going with your gut, right?
Yeah. And I think that could be hard to kind of, trust yourself, whether it's, is something really not sitting right with me, or am I just being anxious about something? For myself, a few years back, I interviewed for a job, and I knew the job offer was pretty much coming my way, but something felt off. But I thought I was just hesitant about, leaving the other job that I loved so much. Mm-hmm. And that I kind of pushed that aside. I said, you're just anxious. And then I went with it, and ended up being really a bad decision. And I kind of went into it and realized like, oh, my intuition was right. I didn't listen to that. So kind of talking about trusting yourself, I think you're somebody that always has like a pretty clear direction of what you want and trusting your instincts. So has that always been the case with you? And have you always had a healthy sense of self-confidence, or has that been something you've kind of worked on over the years?
I think it fluctuates. But growing up, I do think I was like pretty confident. And I
Must be nice.
I know. I mean, I definitely had times where like things didn't go my way and that like fucking sucked. Can I say fuck?
Yeah, you can.
Great, cool. And clip it out if not. But I mean, mostly I think I attribute it to like the way I was brought up, and my parents were good parents and they loved us and they told me I was great and I believed them.
Even when she wasn't.
Even when I wasn't.
Oh.
No, I think there was a healthy amount of like sarcasm even in my childhood, and like, I don't know, like the world doesn't revolve around you, but doesn't mean you shouldn't like think that you're a good person and like try your best, right?
Yeah. I like that a lot. And I think too, like kind of, this is something that I kind of talked about in the gay best friend episode, but I think too, with the gay best friend, they were always kind of like just the sidekick to people. But I think the lesson from that in general is, gay, straight, whatever, you're going to be the main character of your own life, but that doesn't mean you're going to be the main character of everybody else's lives, So it's kind of like you need to, going back to the world doesn't revolve around you, but you still should be invested in yourself and, confident in yourself, because at the end of the day, you are your own world, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why like I try, and I'm like getting better about like setting boundaries, because if I have the choice between disappointing you and myself, I'm probably going to pick you, because like I don't have to deal with, like I'm not responsible for the way that you feel about things. I would never intentionally like hurt somebody else. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, like I have to be responsible for like my own emotional well-being before I can even like try to be there for somebody else.
Sure. And I think that's difficult too, because I think growing up, a lot of us, we're told be kind, be a good person. And I think, I don't want to speak for you, but for myself, sometimes I internalize on sense like I don't want to hurt anybody else's feelings. And sometimes there's going to be, or I don't want to disappoint people. And sometimes there are going to be situations where it's not going to be super easy. If you want to do something you want to do, it's going to disappoint or hurt somebody else. I think there's a respectful way to go about that, but it's important not to, their feelings are valid, but you can't necessarily bring those feelings upon yourself and determine your worth off of how they're feeling.
Yeah. And I think you had an episode about codependency.
Mm-hmm. Or that was episode 2.
Oh, look at you. But yeah, it's like, I can't feel your feelings for you.
Yeah. So can you you said you were always pretty confident, even in childhood, and, because your parents raised you in that sense of, you're like, trust yourself, all those things. Can you kind of walk us through growing up, like anything that might have stood out to you in terms of like your self-confidence journey, like big moments that, either shook your self-confidence or that kind of affirmed your self-confidence?
Yeah. And I don't know that this is like a healthy thing, but I just remember growing up and I never wanted to be one of those people that's like, woe is me, or like whiny or like attention seeking. So I tried to go the opposite of that. And I think in some ways, maybe that wasn't the best for me, because like I wouldn't ask for help necessarily, or I was just like trying to be a bad bitch. I was like 9. But I always like did not want to be that person, and I didn't want to be like that whiny person that everybody has to reassure. So I think, as I got older, it became less about that and more about just choosing what I wanted to do and like going with it. And sometimes that worked out great and sometimes it didn't. But, for better or for worse, I think a lot of times I was like faking it until I made it. And now I just don't like really give a shit. Sometimes I give a shit, we'll be honest, but I think I am better about caring or deciding like whose opinions I want. And if you're giving me life advice, unless you are where I want to be, like, I don't care. You know what I mean?
I think too, it seems like there's a lot of people out there who are so quick to give advice to other people on how they should live their lives or, how they should handle a situation when they don't even have control over what's best for their own life. Like they don't even know what's best for them, but they know what's best for other people. So I think, how'd you get to that point where you can kind of filter out the noise and just really focus on going back to, your intuition, your own thoughts, what feels right for you versus what other people are maybe pushing upon you?
I think I was always pretty rebellious. And I just hated the idea that somebody else would tell me what to do. And my dad was like that too. So I think it is kind of ingrained in my soul. But also therapy. Therapy's the best.
Yeah. Say it every episode. Can't recommend it enough.
Seriously.
That's the solution. I always try to end every episode with some action item that we can do to make things better. And usually it's therapy's the top one. So.
Yeah. Go to therapy and also be a therapist because there's not enough therapists.
And they make good money.
Yeah.
You make more than podcasting. I'm not jaded about that. So that being said, it seems like you have always had that healthy sense of self-confidence, but has there ever been a situation maybe in childhood or maybe more recently in adulthood that's really kind of shaken your self-confidence and, how'd you handle it and recover from it?
Yeah. I mean, every other day. No, not really. But yeah, I mean, there's little things and then there's big things, right? I think about at work, I feel pretty confident. I think I deliver a good, quote, product. And I think I can show up for people, whatever that is, if it's a private yoga lesson or photography. But, occasionally, when I'm taking pictures and things, I just it's a go, go, go scenario. And a lot of times, when I'm working, I'll show people the back of the camera just to get them to see it. And usually 9 times out of 10, they're happy. They're excited. The session's even better because they know oh, I look good. Occasionally though, I'll show it to somebody and they don't like it. And in my brain, I'm shit, I'm terrible at this. But, and I think when I was younger, that may have put me in a spiral. But now I can kind of catch myself and be oh, no, this is probably about them. Because it's oh, they don't like the way their arm looked or whatever. But now it's I can get curious, can figure out what it is that I'm missing or that needs to be changed. And then things are even better than what they were doing before because now it's more personalized and now I've improved upon whatever I was doing.
Yeah. And when it comes to that, when you get those clients who maybe don't like what they see and, obviously, like you said, that's more probably an insecurity they have about something they might see in it that they don't like. But what do you do to help them, either kind of offset that insecurity they might have in that moment or just in general for a shoot, how to make them feel comfortable if they've never really been, because when you're being photographed, you're the center of attention and it's a different kind of environment.
Yeah. It's vulnerable.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of it is prep before the shoot. I send a long list of things to do and what to wear and, taking care of yourself beforehand. So I do try to set people up for success with that. But then also it's a lot of praise, right? Encourage, don't discourage, as my mom would say. Just noticing if they feel uncomfortable, I just switch it. If something doesn't turn out, I'm giving away all my secrets. I would never say it. I would just switch to something else. You really try to keep things positive. And then if you need a break, just take a break, go get a drink. We can take 5 minutes for you to chill out. And occasionally I'll walk somebody through a breathing exercise if it's really bad or uncomfortable.
Yeah. Have you had any situations like that where maybe there's been a client that's been very anxious or very, uncertain of the situation? You've really had to kind of walk them through and help kind of support them in their self-confidence?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say most people are nervous. It's never too bad. And usually the first 5 minutes and I say hey, you're going to feel awkward. You're going to feel like you look dumb. It is awkward and I feel dumb when I get my picture taken, but I'm not going to send you any pictures that you don't look good in. So if it feels awkward, you're probably doing a good job.
And also we're always our worst critic too. So we're going to notice every little pore, every little detail in a photograph, whereas most people see and go, oh my gosh, you look amazing,
Yeah, and I'm such a hypocrite because I'm a total photo brat. My poor boyfriend.
Sorry, Fran. Should I bleep his name out?
Oh, no, he wants a shout out.
Oh, okay. His name is Fran. We're going to spell out the last name. His number is... but going back to the photography piece, I know you've done a lot of wedding photography, engagement photography. I know you've done a bit of how do you pronounce it?
Shit, no, I'm not going to be able to say it.
Boudoir.
Okay.
I know you've done a bit of boudoir work as a photographer. Seriously, beautiful photos. If you haven't, go check her out on Instagram, Tillie Lee Photos, right?
Uh-huh.
Okay, Tillie Lee photos. It'll be in the episode description. But you've also been on both sides of the camera, posing for boudoir shoots and photographing those shoots as well. So in that situation, you're having people literally stripping away their layers and really being vulnerable, both physically and emotionally. And I think a common area of insecurity for people is their body. So in these types of situations, how do you feel confident and empowered in your body? And then on the flip side, how do you help your clients feel empowered in those situations?
Yeah, it's definitely like what I said before. It's like prep work, like I'm exfoliating, I'm self-tanning, doing my hair. I'm picking out outfits that make me feel good, and that helps. But I think like all of us would be lying if we said we didn't have body issues, right? And that's something that like I still struggle with occasionally, but it's just like working with what you have. And I was talking to my therapist about this recently. I'm like, why is it that I still notice when like I think someone's better, like more attractive or smaller than me? He's like, well, you are conditioned to do that, so you could give yourself a break. And I do. And I think everybody should, because there's not one certain way that a body could look. But yeah, I mean, I like trust my photographer. I think that's the best thing you can do, is like hire somebody who works, like speaks to you and is professional and knows like how to hold that space, because it is really vulnerable. Yeah, and if my photographer tells me I am hot, like I'm full of myself enough that I won't believe them. So I just need someone to hype me up, Everybody needs that.
Everybody needs a hype man. And, I think a lot of what you just spoke about can also translate to a relationship, whether it's a friendship with somebody or a romantic relationship, in the sense of, trusting the photographer. That's, you need to trust the person you're with in that relationship. And, again, we might notice every little detail and every little flaw in ourselves, but if we're dating somebody, odds are, even if they see those flaws, it's not a turnoff for them or anything that they're going to criticize, because, if somebody's saying, oh, you're right, you do look like shit here, like, why would you be spending your time with that person?
Yeah. I mean, if you're not like, but your person you're dating is not into you, like that's their problem.
Yeah. So
what are you doing?
Yeah. So for those moments when you might feel insecure, like maybe I don't look great, maybe I don't, this or that, like your partner, they're not going to
supportive.
Yeah. Your partner's going to be supportive. Like they're not going to be, they're grilling you, because if they are, they're not a partner. That's not somebody you should be spending time with. And again, I think it just goes back to that we're more of our own worst critic.
Right. No one else, like honestly, everybody else is so in their own head. Mm-hmm. Nobody gives a shit what you look like for the most part. And if they do, then like, that's probably their own insecurities they're projecting.
Yeah. And I mean, like, this might be a silly example, but like, there's days where like, my hair's super short, but like I'll gel it a certain way or whatever. And then I think, oh, it looks stupid, blah, blah, blah. But it's like, when you go through your day to day, do you ever notice people and like see them and go, oh, that hair looks awful? Like how that really never happens, that situation. And so like, do you think, especially with how short my hair is somebody really going to notice and go their way to be like, Rob, your hair looks terrible? Like, it's just one of those things that we're so worked up on every little thing. Like, does this shirt look okay? Does this hair look okay? That we're not like, I don't think most of us are going through life looking for ways to criticize people and say, oh, that shirt looks awful, that hair looks awful. At least I don't know it's on the day-to-day when I'm out and about seeing other people. So like, we're just more worried about that. But people, and this isn't meant to be a bad thing, but like people aren't paying that much attention to us,
100%. And if they are, like, how sad.
I know.
Pray for them.
So also, on top of being a photographer and businesswoman and all that fun stuff, you've also been practicing yoga for a number of years now. And I think you became a certified yoga instructor back in 2017. And I know yoga is very focused on breathing, being in the moment, finding your center, all that important stuff. So can you talk through the relationship between this sense of mindfulness and how it contributes to self-confidence?
Yeah, I mean, I think it kind of ties to what we were just talking about. It's that if you're like present in the moment, like you're not worried about dumb shit like your hair, And I think that's why people get kind of addicted to yoga, especially like the studio that I teach at, amazing yoga and Shadyside. Like it's so hot and like you feel like you're going to die sometimes. Like you're not worried about anything else. And I think that's why people come, is because you can't like get out of your own head. And there's a lot of people, there's like a whole embodiment movement, it's like going more with like what feels good in your body than like anxieties floating around in your brain. I mean, it's just, if you're living in the present moment, enjoying yourself and like not on your phone, like to me, like you're confident because you're not worried about like dumb little stuff that doesn't matter.
What are some easy ways to stay mindful and like be in the moment?
Well, if it was easy, we'd all be doing it all the time. I
mean, maybe easy is the wrong word. Maybe, what are some good ways to start off like beginner stuff to be mindful?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I I like meditation apps. I like Insight Timer. People use Calm. That's cool. If you do that, like they have a 2-minute one you could start with, or 30 seconds. And I lay down when I meditate because I'm lazy. So I don't feel like you have to sit up with a straight spine. But also it's just like being mindful. So like you could go for a walk without your phone, or you could literally like set a timer on your phone and just, what do I see? What do I hear? What do I smell? Like that's a thing. Sometimes when I'm washing dishes, I'm just like, the water is warm and it smells good. And you know what I mean? It's just like being more aware of your surroundings.
I know I'm guilty of this too. Like I'm always listening to music for everything I'm doing, or a podcast or whatever. So I'll be, doing the dishes, cleaning the house, but there's always music, or I'm on the phone with somebody, or even when I'm going for a walk. So, I might, maybe I do like smell the candle I lit, or, I do notice the sun shining, but not in the same way, because it's like kind of half paying attention to that while I'm like doing 3 other things. So I think that's a good point. Just kind of starting small, like just enjoying some silence and kind of really just focusing on one task instead of multitasking, because multitasking is actually kind of a lie. Because if you're doing that, you're usually not focused on something. So you're kind of just spreading your attention thin across multiple items, not fully committing to any of them.
Right. I mean, like, why do you have to distract? And that's a bigger thing. And you should probably go talk to your therapist about it.
But... Oh, I am. We do frequently.
Yeah, it's really hard. But I mean, even just like if you can take one big breath in and one big breath out and just like be present for that breath, I think a lot of times, especially if you're anxious, it's just like that little kind of cool down.
So, and then I think, I wonder too, because this has been for me sometimes, in some circumstances, I've been afraid to, like if I'm being recognized for something, sometimes I kind of shy away from that a little bit, because I don't want, sometimes the attention feels weird, but also like I don't want to, seem like I'm cocky or arrogant, or like, oh yeah, I did this, blah, blah. So, but at the same time, I think if you're backpedaling too much on that, you're not recognizing your own accomplishments. And I think there's, a very fine line between recognizing yourself and being proud of yourself without being, cocky or arrogant about it and bragging about that. So how do you kind of maintain that line?
Well, now that we're talking about it, I'm like, wow, do I sound arrogant?
You do. Yeah, that's what I'm
I mean, I think like the universe like has its way of humbling me. Like every time I'm like walking on like cloud 9, I'm like, wow, like I really got this. It's like when I look down and realize I have like 2 different shoes on or something. But for me, like the line is kind of like, okay, am I doing this for me, or am I doing it for other people? Like, am I like talking about this thing, or like posting this thing, or whatever, it just to like show off? Or is it like, no, this is for me, like I like this outfit and I think I look good and it feels good, and it's not like I'm seeking validation. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think too, that might just also come naturally. Like if you're doing things, it goes back to, obviously being self-confident. If you're doing things that make you feel good, if you're, wearing clothes that make you feel good, and you're doing it just for yourself, I think that's going to build that confidence within. And then other people just naturally take notice of that. It's not, oh, I'm trying to wear this because I want to look good for somebody, hoping to impress them. I think that part will come naturally. People will be impressed if you're wearing it because it makes you feel good, and that, confidence in yourself is radiating, externally. And, I've talked on here in the past about how we can show ourselves self-compassion. And taking it a step further, I found this list published by the UK National Health Service about ways we can build self-confidence. And these include recognizing what we're good at, learning to be assertive, saying no to things we don't want to do, and challenging ourselves to try new things every day. And I think those are things that we already kind of covered throughout this. But what are some ways you maintain and build your own self-confidence? Because like you said, it's like, every day it could be a challenge sometimes to be confident. So it's an ongoing process of being, confident in yourself.
Yeah, I mean, it is, right? I like that list. I like saying no to things. But I'm just actively like trying to be kinder to myself, because I mean, like even like, occasionally like I get in this like loop where I'm like, oh, like your work's not very good and like you shouldn't do this thing. And like, that doesn't get me anywhere. Like being a dick to myself, like never let me have like any like long lasting sustainable growth. Like I never got anywhere by like being like, wow, Tillie, you really suck today.
I know. And I think it was a self-deprecating humor episode in the fall. But I talked about, in that episode, we were talking about like the negative self-talk. And I think so many of us like just slip into that without even thinking. Like I can think of times where like, and this is something I still catch myself when I try to correct myself. But like, if I make a mistake, like if I, walked upstairs to get something and then I forgot one of the things I was supposed to bring downstairs, or if I knock something over, I'm like, Rob, you're so stupid. Why didn't you think of that or whatever? And it's like trying to correct myself to just be like, all right, no, like you made a mistake. You don't have to call yourself stupid for that. And it might seem like silly and that's so small, but I think those kind of things add up. And, also I try not to say the word hate as much anymore in general, like one for myself, like, oh, I hate this on me. I hate that, blah, blah, blah. But in general, because I think hate is a really strong word that's kind of just become ingrained socially where like we just use it for things we dislike without realizing how strong that word actually is. So if we were saying we hate ourselves or hate this or hate that, do we really, or are we just maybe like unhappy with the situation or unhappy with how we're feeling that day versus actual hate? So I think, like you said, trying to be kinder to yourself, it's important to kind of eliminate that negative self-talk and kind of just correct ourselves when we do, because obviously we're going to have slip-ups, but just kind of correct ourselves and be like, you made a mistake. You don't have to hate yourself. You don't need to call yourself dumb. Like it happens.
Yeah, it's just noticing it. And then the more that you notice it, the quicker you'll bounce back. Mm-hmm. It's impossible to like never have a negative thought. Like our brains are wired. And I think it goes back to like evolution. Like you had to look for tigers or whatever were going to eat you. So. It's like a survival instinct, but I don't think it serves us as much anymore.
So what advice would you give to someone who's interested in becoming more mindful as it relates to building their self-confidence?
I mean, I think we've covered a lot of it, but just definitely like being kinder to yourself. Like it's bleak, but like you're the only person that you can count on at the end of the day. I'm not saying that the only person you can count on, but like for the majority of your life, like, like people die and things happen. And like, you're the only person that you had from day one to like the end of time or for your end of time. So like, why would you not like want to make that person like your best friend? So, being kind to yourself, like trusting yourself. And I think that it can be hard to do that and then get in that groove. But, intuition, man.
I like that a lot. That's it's a little dark, but it's like, it's true though. You're right. Like, like we said, you're your own main character. You're not going to necessarily be the main character in somebody else's story. So, you should be focusing on your own storyline, your own plot line, and, investing in yourself and just trust that the good things will come to you as a result because you have that confidence in yourself.
Yeah. And like not everything that's coming to you is going to be good. Yeah. But if you're nice to yourself, like, don't you think you'll have an easier time with dealing with whatever that is?
Definitely. And, going back to the tarot, we got the 8 of Pentacles in reverse. And I think, it's talking about us being overworked, feeling burdened because we might be putting in the effort to be like, perfectionism might be kicking in. And so we're trying to, really kind of force things to work out a certain way instead of letting it unfold the way it should. I think we talked about that a lot in this episode too, that, if you're trying to manipulate a situation in the sense of, I'm dressing a certain way because I want this person to think I look good, or I'm trying to do this. It's kind of that false sense of confidence. It's validation, not confidence. So I think this card, and as we close on the episode, we really need to reflect on ways that maybe we're doing that and ways we can improve on being kinder to ourselves, being a little bit more confident in our lives, and really just kind of, trusting the universe has our back and learning to really trust our own intuition as we make decisions on what feels right for us.
I read this book by Baron Baptiste, and he talks about with mindfulness and things like that, you get to a point where, how like you'll have a conversation with somebody and it's like you're going through a hard time and they're like, well, you could laugh about this in 10 years. And his idea is like, yeah, like maybe you could laugh about it tomorrow. And that's not going to work for everything, but in my life, it's worked for a lot.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming on today, Tillie. Is there anything you want to plug before we wrap up here?
Sure. So you can find me at tillielee.com. Rob will put it. I almost called you Fran. Rob will put it in the notes. And then my Instagram is Till, like Til. My last name Lee, because people call me Till that like me. Photos. You can find me there.
I'll include all that in the episode description. As always, please remember to rate, review, and subscribe. You can also reach out to me with any questions or feedback, rob@ajadedgay.com. You can follow the podcast on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and SoundCloud @ajadedgaypod. You can follow me personally, Rob Loveless, on Instagram, Rob_Loveless. You can also support the show on Patreon, becoming a monthly donor for as little as $1 a month @ajadedgaypod. And remember, every day is all we have, so you got to make your own happiness. Bye. And then we're going to clap on the count of 3. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Oh, okay. That wasn't in sync. We have to do it again. We want to clap at the same time, right? 1, 2, 3. Close enough. I think it should be fine.
I mean, if you want to do it again.
All right, let's one more for good measure.
Okay.
Ready? 1, 2, 3. Perfect. Okay.
God.
I need to start this. So to kind of line it up, let's talk about what's the topic? Empowerment.
Are you serious?
Let's talk
Confidence?
about
Maybe.